See, the wounds is very part and parcel of any plastic surgeon's clinical practice. And acute wounds, the role of plastic surgeon is to achieve best possible closure, which is looking aesthetically sound. But at the same time, the wounds, when they do not heal in stipulated time and they become chronic, then becomes all the more burden for a plastic surgeon, because he has to meet the expectations of the patients and achieve the healing in those delayed wound healing cases also, with the aesthetic outcome as much as possible. So with these few words, I start my presentation on the management of chronic wounds. See, normal wound healing, as we all know, classically is described having 3 phases, but one has to know that these phases are not sequencing. I mean, they are not in sequence, they are overlapping. So these 3 classical phases are stage of inflammation, proliferation, and then the last is the remodeling and maturation. So this is how the wound goes through all these stages to heal. Next. This is just to show the sequence of events that take place, overlapping. As soon as the injury takes place, there is coagulation to control the blood loss. And then there is migration of the inflammatory cells, the neutrophils. Then comes macrophages. And in the late inflammatory phase, the fibroblasts also appear. And these fibroblasts are the source of collagen formation, laying down of collagen. There is to be a balance between the collagen synthesis and collagen breakdown. And there is angiogenesis. All these factors, angiogenesis, migration of the cells, help in the healing of a wound. And then there is migration of the keratinocytes, which achieves the epithelialization. Now, what is abnormal? When does a wound becomes chronic? It is not that one has to wait for a period of 6 weeks or 12 weeks to say that now this wound is chronic. In fact, one can predict that this wound is going to behave abnormally if one finds that the percentage surface area reduction is less than 15% per week. If the wound surface area doesn't show reduction of 15% or more in a week, then it indicates towards delayed wound healing and all the likelihood of that wound becoming a chronic. Excuse me, I have some sore throat. So this is how a wound becomes chronic. We can see, and there are various definitions. Usually it is the 6 weeks. Normally the wound would heal in 3 weeks time. And if double of that time, if we take, doesn't heal by 6 weeks, then we label those wounds as chronic wounds. Some people say one can wait up to 12 weeks to label it as, but by and large, 6 weeks is the time by which, if the wound doesn't heal, is labeled as a chronic wound. Now, when the patient comes with a chronic wound, then we have to manage the case. We have to treat the patient as a whole, not that we just focus on the wound, because this delayed healing or the reason of becoming a chronic wound may be some systemic factors as well. So we have to look into those causes. We have to tackle the wound at the local level, and we have also to address to the patient's concerns. The tissue, how to handle that tissue, how to handle that wound is on the basis of a famous time principle that I would cover later. So that time principle is very important and should always be kept in mind when dealing with chronic wound. Next. Next, please. Now, assessment of the patient. As we know, the patients may be having diabetes. The patient may be a smoker. So we have to achieve glycemic status of the patient who is diabetic. We have to ask the patient to stop smoking. We have to manage the edema in the extremity or wherever the wound is situated, because edema interferes with the wound healing. I would come to it in later one of my later slides. And at the same time, we have to improve the nutrition, because many of these patients, whether they are diabetic or not, they are nutritionally deprived. They come from the lower socioeconomic status and they are nutritionally deprived. And so we have also to look into their nutritional status. So all these factors, they have to be assessed, they have to be managed and tackled side by side, the management of the wound. So how do we have to look at the wound? Now, as I was talking about the time principle, where the T stands for tissue, and in the tissue we look for non-viable tissue. And if it is a non-viable tissue, then we have to get rid of that tissue by various methods of debridement. We have to look at the infection, I. So infection or inflammation, that has to be controlled. Then very important part is the M, that is moisture. Many of these wounds are either dry or they are over exuding wounds. There's copious exudation, and there is even maceration of the adjacent skin, healthy skin. So moisture balance has to be restored. And then is the looking at the edge of the wound. The edge of the wound, if we look at, it would give us the idea whether this wound is progressing towards healing or it is static, or if there is any undermining of the wound. So all those things have to be considered with the E of that time principle. Next. This is the way, another way of expressing that tissue requires debridement, infection control, moisture balance. Next. Debridement is to tackle the biofilm also. Biofilm is very notorious nowadays. And infection control is to reduce the bioburden so that the wound progresses towards a healing. And moisture balance, of course, is very important. Next. Wound pH is also important, because normally the skin pH is acidic. It is somewhere between 4 to 6. But when the wound enters into chronic stage, then it is towards the alkaline pH. And this is the alkaline pH which also favors the formation of biofilms. So we have to look at the wound pH, and thereby we can control the formation of biofilm as well. Next. Now, how would the different types of tissue appear in the wound? This is, I'm trying to show that the black tissue is, of course, it is a dead and necrotic tissue. The yellow indicates the slough. The red part is a granulation. And at the edge, you may find a pinkish part, that is the epithelialized part, or the whitish margin of the wound edge, which indicates the epithelialization. So initially it may be white, and then after some time that white portion may become pinkish. So that shows that it is a healed part. The skin regeneration has already taken place there. Next. So all these 4 types of tissue you may find in a chronic wound. This is just to show the different type of the tissue. Necrotic is absolutely black, hard, scar, and it needs to be debrided. Then there may be a sloughy wound, which is yellowish, and this yellow slough has to be debrided. Next. Granulating wound, again, it may be healthy granulation or it may be infected granulation. And infected granulation is appearing as a edematous. Healthy is like granular red in appearance. And there may be mixed type, where all these different tissue types are present in a wound. So as I said, if the tissue is dead, necrotic, it has to be debrided. There are various methods of debridement. The most sure way of debriding and the most definitive way is the surgical debridement. But that surgical debridement has to be in a bit cautious manner, so that we do not unnecessarily remove the normal tissue. So stage debridement is always the need of the time, and it is most cost effective. It is the quickest way of getting rid of the necrotic tissue. Next. Then there may be other forms of debridement, like using hydrojet treatment, pressure irrigation, and use of some dextronomers, and the old and time-tested method of, if nothing of these things are available, is the wet to dry dressings. Next. If you do not do anything and you leave the wound to the nature's care, then also the debridement takes place, and that is called autolytic debridement. It is because of the locally produced proteolytic enzymes and the phagocytic cells which debride the devitalized tissue, but it takes a lot of time, and as we know that the longer that wound takes to heal, the more is the chances of adverse scar formation. Next. Chemical debridement is good for those wounds where there is minute slough, where the necrotic tissue is very scanty, and where if you do go for the surgical debridement, you may unnecessarily sacrifice the normal looking tissue. So in those situations, you can use the chemical debridement, which is possible through the use of various enzymes, papain-urea and collagenase. These are the two enzymes which have been used, and the only thing is that this should be this is good only for the minute dead tissue, minute slough. Next. Then there may be use of some larvae, like Lucilia sericata or blowfly maggots. The good part is that these maggots, they they scavenge only the dead tissue. They do not eat the normal tissue. But then the patients may not comply with it. The patients may have adverse feeling while when the maggots are working on it, and the availability of maggots also. So this is not very common, but then it has been used. Next. So when we talk of the bacterial burden, that we have to reduce the bacterial burden, then the one thing that is to be kept in mind is that one cannot get the sterilized wound totally. The bacteria may be there, but as long as they are just present on the surface of the wound, that is, they are contaminating or colonizing local, then we need not bother. But the moment we see if the presence of this bacteria is spreading, if it is causing inflammation, as it may be represented by the reddish, angry looking margins, or increase in the exudate, then one has to, or increase in the size of the wound, then it suggests infection, and one has to actively intervene. Next. These are the various stages of wound infection. That wound contamination and wound colonization doesn't require any systemic antibiotic. If we just clean the wound with copious saline or the water, then distilled water or RO water, then it is enough to get rid of this surface bacteria present on the surface. But if there is critical colonization, or if it is obvious colonization, like when we do the quantitative biopsy and it shows 10 to the power 5, which indicates wound infection, or the undermining at the edges, and we find the inflamed edges or the abscess formation, then it definitely invites for systemic antibiotic. Next. This is to show the various stages again. And the biofilm formation, the moment when the a wound is there for more than 4 to 6 weeks, then you just take it that this wound must be having a biofilm. So from the stage of local infection, the biofilm starts appearing. I would tell you how biofilm would look like and what is the life cycle of the biofilm later on. Next. I have already covered. These are the signs that of wound infection when you should get alert and you start the systemic antibiotic. But just looking at a wound, one should not jump at the antibiotics. I have seen it my clinical practice many times. The people ask which antibiotic, or the patient asks, "Sir, you have not written any antibiotic." Patient has already consumed antibiotics before coming to us, so we do not jump at the antibiotics. We just look at the wound. We take the surface culture, we can take the quantitative culture, and we see whether this is invasive or not. If it is not, then local measures are enough. Next. Now, what are the microbes there in this wound? So about a week from the wounding, you will find the normal skin flora is there. And up to 4 weeks, you will find the dominance of gram positive, and subsequently you will find gram negative and even anaerobes. So this is a rough idea about the nature of the microorganisms that one is likely to come across in these wounds. Next. These are the various anaerobic microbes that may be there in the wound. The Peptostreptococcus or the Clostridium or Eubacterium or diphtheroids. These are the, bacteroids. So these are the various microbes, anaerobic microbes, which are likely to be there. Next. Now, what are the goals of wound healing? So what we want to achieve is that this wound should heal in a proper time. This wound should heal without any adverse outcome in terms of hypertrophic scar or keloid. It should not get infected. There should not be any pain, and it should be best. It should have a best aesthetic outcome. So these are some of the goals that one keep in mind when dealing with these wounds. Next. So what are the basic principles of managing a wound? Besides the assessment of the patient, now we come to the wound. As I have told earlier also, that we have to get rid of the tissue. We have to follow the time principle, and this is nothing but the same thing. Besides that time principle, you have also to see that you do not put any excess pressure on that part, and try to achieve the closure of the wound as early as possible. As soon as you find the wound conditions are favorable, either by means of a flap or a graft or whatever you find is suitable for that particular type of a wound. Next. Now, this is just to tell the postgraduates that if we look at the different type of the tissue present in the wound, then what is the requirement? What step one has to take? Naturally, if the tissue is dead, it has to be debrided. And this tissue is dead, this is dry, and there is no moisture in this wound. So not only that this wound is debrided, it has to be dressed, and the dressing would be a hydrogel or honey dressing. Hydrogel, where it creates moisture. Hydrogel dressings are having a layer which gets into a gel form when it comes in contact with the water. So in dry wounds, the necrotic wounds after debridement should be covered with the hydrogel dressings or honey dressings, the medical grade honey. And then it has to be retained with the transparent film or the ordinary dressing that whatever one has. And if the wound is showing slough, then slough, again, it means there is not enough moisture in it. So besides, after the debriding, you have to go the hydrogel dressing. If the wound is gray or having moderate to high exudation, if it is highly exuding wound, then one has to use a dressing which absorbs this drainage. Because if otherwise, this exudation would also spill over the adjacent surrounding skin, and it was called maceration. So the wound may extend further. So that exudation has to be tackled by using dressings which are absorbent in nature, by using alginates or by using foam dressings. They absorb the exudation. So these are the dressings which are required for the highly exuding wounds. Highly exuding wounds can also be managed with the negative pressure wound therapy. Negative pressure wound therapy also takes care of this exudation and undermining of the wound edges, but then it is costly and may not be available in all the places. But these dressings, they are present over the shelf, and therefore one can use these dressings also to same advantage as one would achieve probably with the NPWT, which is costly. Next. Next. Next, please. So moisture balance, as I said, by using these dressings, for dry wounds, you use hydrogel dressings. For exuding wounds, you use pads and foams and alginate dressings. So this is the way that you try to restore the moisture balance. Next. So this is about the dressing, which is ideal. It is very difficult to find an ideal dressing, but then you have to select the dressing for that particular wound, as I have already told. And the aim is to, again, to maintain the moisture, get rid of the dead tissue, and most important is prevent the biofilm. Next. Now, when I say moisture, then there is one term, moisture vapor transmission rate. Now, what we have been using for time immemorial is the gauze dressings, gauze and bandage, gauze, cotton, and bandage. Now, if we see that these gauze bandage dressing, they do not prevent any loss of moisture. The moisture, the vapor evaporates, it comes out very easily with the gauze dressings. And in order to retain the moisture in the wound, we have to use hydrocolloid dressings. Now, if we look at what it is a requirement, a dressing should have at least less than 840 gram per square meter in 24 hours, the MVTR, that is transmission rate, moisture vapor transmission rate. And in the gauze, it is more than 1200. So gauze dressings are absolutely not good for retaining the moisture. And the best is the hydrocolloid, like polyurethane film that can be used for these wounds. The granulating wounds where there is not much of exudation, we can use the hydrocolloid dressings so that the loss of moisture is kept at a minimum. Next. However, we can still retain these gauze dressings when we do not have other things than wet to dry dressing is a very common way of getting rid of necrotic tissue and slough from a wound. But then it won't provide you a moist wound healing. That has to be kept in mind. Next. Transparent films, they are very good because they allow the oxygen to migrate. These hydrocolloid dressing, they allow oxygen to migrate into the wound. At the same time, they decrease the loss of the moisture, but they are good for minimum exudate or minor exudate and not for heavy exuding wounds. Next. Next. I have already covered hydrocolloid dressings. What are the properties? The foam dressings are very efficient in absorbing the exudating wounds. So in great exuding wounds, you use the foam dressings or alginate dressings. Next. Yeah, there may be composite dressings also, where there is a, we can have a polyurethane film, and in the center we can have dressing which has got antibiotic in it. It may be either silver or some other form. So when these two purposes are served, these two elements of dressings, then we call this dressing as a composite dressing, which absorbs as well as deliver the antibiotic to the wound. Next. Collagen dressings, I think all of us know, and many of our postgraduates must have also heard collagen dressings in India, popularized by Dr. Matangi Ramakrishnan from Chennai. And these collagen dressings can also be used, but not only heavy exuding wounds or moderately exuding wounds. And if there is minimal exudation, these collagen dressings are good. They are also good for the granulating wounds. One has to be careful while using these collagen dressings to look, to inspect. If there is any collection under these dressings, then it has to be taken out, or the dressing may have to be refreshened. Next. These are the, there are many silver containing dressings like ionic silver or nano silver. The nano silver dressings are in the vogue these days because nano silver, they are very small particles, but then they have very large surface area. So their action is quite extrapolated. So they can manage the infection much more efficiently than the metallic silver or the ionic silver. It is also supposed to be good for the tackling the biofilms. This is not a common honey that we see in our kitchen, but it is a medical grade honey. And as I had already told earlier, also in one of the slides, that it promotes moist wound healing. So for the dry wound or having a scar where we have gone for debridement, these can be dressed with the honey, my medical grade honey. It also helps in lowering the wound pH, and lowering the wound pH also achieves epithelialization. Next. I would skip this slide. This is almost same. Yeah. Now biofilms, you see, these days, why I said that looking at the wound, please do not jump at using an antibiotic, because these patients have already consumed a lot of antibiotics. The wound is there for 6 weeks, and if you look at these wounds, you may find a very abnormal looking eschar thin film, and that thin film or eschar, which appears to naked eye but is actually to be looked into under the microscope, is nothing but the biofilm. And this biofilm is, what is biofilm? Biofilm is a sheet which is produced by the microorganisms. These microorganisms present on the wound surface for a long time. They secrete mucopolysaccharides to their exterior, and this spreads over, make a sheet on the wound. It entraps these microorganisms, and by doing that, it interferes with the delivery of the antibiotics. So one may use tons of antibiotics, but this antibiotic would never be reaching these microbes because these biofilms are there protecting these microbes. Moreover, there is something known as quorum sensing. Quorum sensing is the talk between the cells, talk between the microbes. So they talk to each other and they keep proliferating. So they are protected from the host immune factors or locally applied things or the systemic antibiotics. And therefore, these biofilms are highly resistant to antibiotics and they have to be tackled. And the best way to get rid of these biofilms is again debridement. Of course, there are some agents also which are supposed to be some antibiotics also, which claim to be removing the biofilms. But the best way, the easiest way, and the most economical way is to debride the wound to get rid of these things. Next. This is how do they look under the electron microscope on the top, and the wound with the biofilm that would appear to you in the bottom. Next. So not appear overnight. So these biofilms, they first attach, these microbes first attach. When they attach, that is called docking on the wound surface. Then they interact with each other, that is quorum sensing. They grow and mature, and then finally they get dislodged. They get dislodged by debridement or by use of some agents. So this is how this biofilm life cycle is completed. Next. And one thing is more is that it is also polymicrobial, not that one organism alone. And the most notorious is the Staph aureus. That is why we see that Staph aureus is resistant to many antibiotics, even to vancomycin. And then Pseudomonas is also there, which is notorious for biofilm formation. This is biofilm, how it will look under the electron microscope. Next. Next, please. So the topical application is the best to start with. We debride the tissue, dead tissue, we control the moisture balance, and we apply the topical agents, maybe antiseptic or maybe antibiotic or a combination. And when we have done it for 3 weeks and we find that there is no change in the wound, or the wound was initially showed some changes, but again, and it has started deteriorating in appearance or increasing in size, then is the role of using the antibiotic as per the sensitivity report. But till then, one should always use the topical agents. Next. So these are the various antiseptics that can be used, like povidone iodine, chlorhexidine, silver dressings, hydrogen peroxide. These are the locally acting antiseptics that should be used. Next. And then there are some antibacterial ointments also, like neomycin, polymyxin B combination, or fusidic acid, or cataxamar iodine. So these are the, or the cataxamar iodine in combination with matrogel. So taking care of anaerobes as well. So these are the topical applications which may be used. Next. This is just to tell that you use both combine these antiseptics with the topical antibiotics to achieve a better infection control. Next. Now, there is one term called cellular senescence. Cellular senescence is nothing but it reflects that the cells have gone into sleep mode. They have gone into sleep mode. So they are no more active. And these antibiotics, when we use, they usually act on the actively dividing cells. And that is also one of the reasons why these colonies are resistant to use of systemic antibiotics. So what should we do? One thing, as I told, that if it is biofilm, then you debride, but then you can bring in some cells. And that is where there is role of using stem cells. Then stem cells, they help in mobilizing the new cells into the wound. They alter the environment and they remove the old senescent cells. So that is the role of stem cells, which I'm sure you know about the hematopoietic stem cells or adipose tissue derived stem cells. There are various types people have used. People have used platelet-rich plasma. I have used cord blood as a source of stem cells, and also the adipose-derived stem cells. They all help uh, in removing these sleeping cells. Next. This is a sort of biologic enhancement. So the other things which are there are various growth factors. There are things like prostaglandin or interleukin or granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factor, which has been injected into the wound margins. But this is not regularly practiced. And what we have used is the growth factors. But mind you, the growth factors have to be used only when the wound is in a proper form, when wound is adequately prepared, when wound bed is adequately prepared, then only one can use the growth factors to some advantage. Otherwise, there is no use of growth factors. Next. These are the various growth factors. What we find in the market is the PDGF, easily available, and also the epidermal growth factor. Next. Next. Next, please.
Sir, I'm changing the slides. It's not showing.
Yeah. There are some other locally available things like this medical grade honey, or people have used some herbs also to improve this wound healing. Next. This is just to show that wound bed can also be assessed. A different score can be given depending on the presence of the tissue, the margins, and looking at the color of the wound, that various points are given, and wound bed scoring can also be done. Next. So to conclude this management of the wound, I would say that I would like to reiterate the fact that mostly these wounds are polymicrobial in nature. So you cannot start antibiotic aiming at one organism. The best way is to tackle the wound by local arrangement. The anaerobic bacteria have to be kept in mind, which may be present in 50% of the infected wounds. And the systemic antibiotics should be used after a proper trial of the locally acting agents and the wound management. Next. So one should always think of the biofilm and take adequate steps to prevent. Not only that, once you debride and you think that this biofilm has gone forever, if you leave this wound without closing it, then again you will find the development of a biofilm. So after as soon as you find that wound bed is favorable, you should immediately intervene surgically to close the wound surface. Otherwise, again, this wound will have a biofilm. Thank you so much. If there is any question, I would be happy to answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for the fantastic lecture, sir, because it's really eye-opening the way actually chronic wounds are being managed nowadays, and also the availability of a lot of newer dressing materials and newer methodology of treating these chronic wounds. Also, you have shared all those information. Just checking out this chat.
Hello, I'm not able to listen.
You're not able to hear, sir?
May you please be louder?
Okay. Am I audible now, sir?
Yeah, partly.
Oh. Uh,
Or if it can be written, or
Uh,
no, sir, you're able to hear me now? I'll speak a
yeah,
bit
please.
louder.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, is it because of the? I think the fan is actually making a noise. Is it a background sound that you're hearing?
No, no, I'm not hearing any background sound, but
Okay.
now I can listen to what
Hear
you are
me
saying.
better now. Okay. Yeah, yes, sir. So it is a fantastic lecture, sir, on how to actually the newer methodologies of actually treating chronic wounds, how chronic wounds are affected by biofilms, how we are actually treating the biofilms, the newer dressing materials, all those things you have actually explained it beautifully, sir. I just want to ask you a couple of questions in that regard. So you
Yeah.
are giving a lot of importance to edema,
Yes.
tissue edema and management of tissue edema. So how are the methods, what are the methods that you suggest for actually managing the immediate tissue edema around that chronic wound? Is it massage alone, or is it just medicines alone, or do you have a combination of massage, medicines, manual lymph drainage, etc., sir?
Well, not massage. I would not say massage for these wounds, but negative pressure wound therapy, I think, is the best way to tackle the tissue edema. If we use the various enzymes, like trypsin, chymotrypsin, other things, which together with the local application of the antibiotics and debridement of the uh, tissue edema indicates some degree of some infection there. So if all these measures they help in getting rid of the tissue edema, then it is good. Otherwise, one should, after debridement, one should subject these wounds to negative pressure wound therapy. So that is supposed to tackle the edema as well as improve the circulation to the wound. So that would also help in the relieving of the edema as well as uh, supplying the oxygen and improving the delivery of the medicine, drugs, and other things. So negative pressure wound therapy, I would say, would be the best way if the local measures like elevation of the extremity, if it is there in the extremity, the debridement of the tissue, and removing the exudate. If all these measures fail to get rid of the tissue edema, then negative pressure wound therapy would be the best.
So what about the role of hyperbaric oxygen? Because many places now emphasize hyperbaric oxygen. The surgeon seems to be less bit reluctant to get patients to and have hyperbaric oxygen treatment, but
Hyperbaric
other
oxygen
people.
has also been tried, in these chronic wounds. The first thing is the availability. Second is the cost. So I do not have any hyperbaric oxygen facility in my institute. I have not. There was one trying to come up in a private circle, but it has also not come there. But then these hyperbaric oxygen chambers in some of the big cities in Delhi and other places, they are there in the private hospitals, corporate hospitals, and All India Institute also. So, but hyperbaric oxygen does have a good role in these wounds, definitely.
Okay, so it's something that if it is
Particularly
available.
in diabetic wounds, I would say diabetic wounds or atherosclerotic wounds, these hyperbaric oxygen would be of great use.
Okay, sir. The only hindering factor probably is the cost involved because multiple sessions have to be there, and then each session is pretty expensive. Yeah. Sir, what about your experience in when you're managing these chronic wounds? How often do you find fungal infections in these wounds? Do you actually routinely do you go for fungal culture? Do you normally start some antifungals, etc., sir? Especially in
Well,
diabetic
it is
wounds.
very pertinent question. When nothing helps, then one always think of a presence of a fungus in the wound. I think that should be given some place in the initial management as well. If the wound has been there for more than 12 weeks or so, when the other things have not worked, we have tried, but we didn't find any positive outcome in that, in the sense that we couldn't get fungus isolated from the wound bed. So, but then there are reports that the fungus may be also one of the reasons where the wound becomes, you say, defined. It doesn't heal. Then one has to think of a possibility of fungus and role of antifungal agents. I have not come across such type. Yeah.
Okay.
Although we thought of it in that it is a fungus, might be fungus, but we wanted documentation. We wanted documented proof, and we failed in that attempt. But
So
then
then,
there are reports. There are reports.
okay, sir. So then, how often do you suspect anaerobic wounds? Because we hardly do any culture for anaerobic culture. Usually, routinely anaerobic cultures are not performed. But when do you actually suspect that okay, this could be an anaerobic wound, so I have to actually do something further? I have to give a more
See,
broad spectrum.
if the wound shows necrotic tissue again and again, if we debride, then again we find that after 2 or 3 days there's some necrotic tissue again. Then we debride and we find repeatedly. Then one should think of anaerobic culture. These are the, I agree fully with you that it is not a routine method. Even in tertiary care institutions, anaerobic culture is not routinely done. Only on particular request they may carry out the anaerobic culture. In corporate hospitals, you can always get it done. But these are the situations where one should suspect the presence of anaerobic microbes, where repeated debridement leads to reappearance of a necrotic tissue.
Okay, sir. So, or is it prudent to actually, when you are suspended, like you said that multiple times you're seeing that you debride, then again it forms necrosis, then again debride, again necrosis, like that. In those kind of situations, is it prudent to actually start prophylactic anaerobic antibiotics covering the anaerobic spread?
Yeah. Sure.
Or do you routinely give for all cases anaerobic covers?
Not routinely for all cases. Not routinely for all cases, and these wounds would also be suitable for hyperbaric oxygen,
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
where you
So then,
find that this necrosis is appearing again and again. This would also be suitable for hyperbaric oxygen.
so could you tell something more about honey, sir? Because honey is something which is not commonly seen in our part of the country. Uh,
What?
the medical grade honey you were talking about, the honey dressing.
Honey, yeah. No, I
Yeah.
have no experience.
Okay.
I have no experience with medical grade honey, but
Okay, sir.
in the literature it mentions, and
Okay, sir.
I have not come across. I have not used
Oh,
the medical
okay,
grade
okay.
honey. I have not used.
Okay, sir. So currently, our most important weapon or most what do you call it, foolproof weapon against most of the chronic wounds, except for the vascular compromised wounds, would be probably negative pressure wound therapy, right, sir?
I would say so. That is most
Okay, sir.
important. If we see all said and done, after debriding the wound, after achieving the best possible appearance of the wound, I would still like if the patient can afford to have 1 or 2 sittings of negative pressure wound therapy before going for the definitive closure of the wound. I have found it to be very, very helpful and with good results.
Yes, sir. Dr. Lakshmi, any questions from your side, please?
Uh, Sir, very well covered regarding the biofilms and management of chronic wound. Can you share your experience in chronic wound, burn wounds, sir?
Which wound?
Burn wounds,
Burn
chronic
wounds.
wounds.
Burned wounds, ma'am, I would say, uh, besides that routine use of other things that we have been doing, there is a scope of using phage, bacteriophage therapy. Now, there are attempts, we are trying to find out the bacteriophages. You know, the Pseudomonas is the most notorious and offending microbe in the burn wound infection. And we are trying to use the bacteriophages against Pseudomonas. That is something very new uh, field. But otherwise, the burn wound infection, as others also experience the same, the Pseudomonas, Klebsiella, Acinetobacter. These are the common microorganisms, and many times they would show resistance to all the antibiotics. But when we do it, when we use it, then many times the patients respond as well. So there is in vivo and vitro, there is maybe some difference in the sensitivity pattern.
Sir, just one more, Dr. Lakshmi, if I can just interrupt, sir. Just one more question, sir. So, in case of chronic wounds, when we are actually putting negative pressure wound therapy, uh, is it prudent to actually stop that? See, because that particular treatment is pretty expensive. If he doesn't have any systemic features of systemic infection, is it prudent to actually avoid antibiotics? Because technically, physically, the microbes are also removed by the negative pressure wound therapy, sir. So, is it prudent to actually stop the antibiotics in these patients?
Systemic antibiotic, you mean?
Yes, I mean basically antibiotics. If there is no system, if there is no fever, if there is no
Yeah,
features of
yeah. I
septicemia.
personally feel that my attempt is always to use the locally acting antibiotics and achieve the good wound bed. And once it is there, then go for the definitive closure by using a graft or a flap, whatever is appropriate for that wound. So this is my approach. And but at that time, I would give the systemic antibiotic at the
Sir,
time of going for a definitive surgical procedure.
so how
But
often?
before that, I would not, unless the patient has the local or systemic signs of infection. If the local signs of wound infection are not responding to our local care, then I will use systemic antibiotic. Or if there are systemic signs of wound infection, like the patient is having fever or chills and other things, then I will go for the systemic antibiotic.
Sir, how often? I mean, is it very common to see vasculitis, or when do we actually think of these rarer causes of chronic wounds like vasculitis, etc.?
These are the rare causes, They are the rare causes and they have to be managed accordingly. But what we see in these chronic wounds, whether it is diabetic or not, so they do not pose with that problem. In the diabetic wounds, one has to achieve, first of all, the glycemic control as much as possible, because there is a vicious cycle in these wounds. So not only there is increase in the requirement of the anti-diabetic agents, and one has to control the infection. So one has to find a balance in these wounds and use judiciously.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. It was actually beautifully covered, sir.
Thank you.
Uh, there are, I think, no further questions in the chat box. Dr. Lakshmi, shall we go to the case discussion?
Any questions that you can ask after that case discussion? We can go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Isha is the person who's actually presenting the case, right?
Where am I?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Isha.
Sir, may I share my screen, sir?
Yeah, yeah, please start. Please share your screen. Sir, Jain sir, Dr. Umar Farooq has asked one question. What about using vinegar, especially in Pseudomonas?
I have found it to be effective also. Vinegar, 1%, it helps. Yeah. So these are the
And
various measures, people have tried, people have used. Sometimes we forget that vinegar can be used because we are not doing it routinely. But sometimes when it clicks, then we do use, and it is good. Vinegar is used good. Actually, when we see the dressings stained bluish green and other things, so the first thing we recommend is the use of vinegar.
And
Yeah.
now couple of, now routinely, I think we in our institute, we have actually shifted to 2% acetic acid from the 1%. We now request a
Okay.
2% acetic acid we have been using. Routinely, we have been using for now, many years we have been using 2%
Yeah, that is good.
acetic acid.
That is good.